The shit's chess, it ain't checkers.
This game has two sides, maybe three or more competing factions for the prize of our attention, our money, power and energy. And in late December 2019, the UN were alerted by Taiwan and China of an outbreak. The Communist Party of China and the UN then seemed to hide such information from the world in such a way that it seemed they had it all under control and everything was going to be okay. They whitewashed information, which has led to a world pandemic. This is when the G20 members began issuing bonds, creating loans and borrowing billions from the central banks of the world, bringing world debt up to 300 trillion or 10% of the entire world's economy. The Vaccine Alliance was then put into full force with programs such as Operation Warp Speed from the World Bank, Gates Foundation, Gavi Alliance, research agencies, UNICEF, manufacturers and other organisations, which led to many companies creating vaccines such as the Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Oxford, BioNTech and many others, giving record profits for a few companies in this field. Programs were designed to extract data, information, people's feelings, actions and behaviours have been monitored and moulded into shape by kingpins such as Dominic Cummings, ministers and other promotions towards this massive haulings, you could say. Then we have the government's SAGE group, a non-elected body which is a money-making think tank for the few with vested interests in making vast profits out of the public purse. This has all been backed up and supported by the mainstream media outlets such as CNN, NBC, NPR, Fox, many newspapers and big companies such as the BBC, as well as the social media sites on everyone's phones and computers such as Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook and many more that have been new ones that have been coming through. Then there is the pawns of the game, the smiley, promising politicians and men of wealth who sit there and guilt trip the people into products and just picking sides of whatever information fits their views of the controlled opposition. We also have the controlled opposition on the other side with their high watch counts, convincing and scary information videos on the opposition side, controlled opposition side. It's always on time, always there to reel out and repackage something they did in the past to collect more revenue for their grift adventures. Then there's the pawns of information, which is the smaller YouTube channels and intelligence assets. As mentioned in previous episodes, the information goes down the line and it's spread out by people. So when I say
the shit's chess, it ain't checkers,
what I mean is they are playing us. They want us to be involved, get hurt, angry, play the game, and it doesn't matter which side you choose, they just want people to play. All they have to do is get people into a state of fear, then roll out the controlled, stipulated sides from which individuals can be a part of. It kind of reminds me of Ohm's law, but if you change Volt with the greedy corporations and politicians, you change Ohm for the anti-vaxxers, and you change AMP for the people, you might kind of get my drift. People are being led down either garden path and controlled with everything, every last bit of truth and lies, down to every last thought and behavioural action has been thought of by government nudge teams and the controlled opposition teams before, during and after the pandemic to coerce or manage the different factions being forged during the pandemic. So having gone through, provided enough clear evidence, backed up with scientific studies, reports, hypothesis, results, peer-reviewed papers, learned basic bioinformatics and a number of scientific studies, having given enough clear explanation as to what it is, how to test for it, having debunked just about every claim on the way very easily, seen all the rabbit holes people are led down by the Pied Pipers of grift information that only financially benefits those spreading these false claims, and found many sources to all these claims. There is still one question that hasn't been answered, is just being addressed, and that is, where did it actually come from? And if you're still in the virus denial circle after all the evidence that is available, then you need to go and debunk that evidence or provide an alternative to the accepted model instead of just saying it doesn't exist, because that's done now. I've mentioned before that the so-called elite are not in it for the money but the power. But all along the lines, every possible space was maximized, every possible profit was made by the individual, the major corporations, those with vested interests in governments, and if it didn't exist at all these maximized profits would have disappeared within a few weeks and the game would have been up quick. So we have a virus with the ability to infect as many people as possible without killing as many people as possible, and it came from a source which we haven't spoke about yet. It has maximized profits for PPE, tests, face masks, the billions made in revenues from vaccines just in the first year, and it also coincided with the massive pharmaceutical industry, technological and financial reset that's been going on. So when asking and searching for the question, where did SARS-CoV-2 originate from, I searched hundreds of videos, websites, live discussions and many other places to try and find the answer to this question. There's irrefutable evidence that SARS-CoV-2 came from a natural source. Coronaviruses are common in human and animals. They cause cross-species infections by jumping from one host to another. And that's what happened with SARS-CoV-2. It also happened with SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV, but their infectious ability was low compared to SARS-CoV-2. Scientists have mapped the genomes of over 3 million samples and counting of SARS-CoV-2 from patients in the USA, China, Europe, Brazil, South Africa and many other places across the world. Subsequent genetic analysis has revealed that SARS-CoV-2 is 96% similar to a bat virus called rat TG13, first sampled from the Yunnan province of China in 2013. Additional data indicates that SARS-CoV-2 likely circulated unnoticed in bats for decades before an identified. Divergent dates go back as far as 1948 have been estimated. Bats are common reservoirs for coronaviruses known to infect humans, including SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV. But how did this virus get from bats to humans? The use of bat guano or excrement as fertilizer may have contributed to the spread of the disease, or the tradition of eating rare and unusual wildlife might have been behind the outbreak. It's likely there is an intermediate host for SARS-CoV-2, the receptor binding domain of the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, which rules out lab creation, is genetically similar to a coronavirus that infects pangolins. So it could be that SARS-CoV-2 jumped from bats to pangolins and then to humans. And also within the finalization and completion of the Chinese high-speed rail in early 2019, this could have also played a major role in spreading it to the major cities in China, and then aeroplanes spread it to places around the world as 3 million people per week in January and February of 2020 were leaving the Wuhan and Yunnan regions of China to go to places around the world. This is how it spread quickly around the world. So there are still many things and questions that need addressing as to the origins of where it came from, how it spread, because there are still people that don't want these origins to be revealed, as it's very high stakes in terms of profits. So just going through my research that I started in May of 2020, possibly earlier actually. The first page goes through the explanation. It was naturally derived, studied for 25 and modified along the line to build a mass pharmaceutical machines of propaganda and lies. It again goes through the contents. 45 pages. There's over 500 videos and links. Within the whole thing, you can click on any of these links and it takes you to another page. Also goes through onto my page, some of the videos that I've done. Scrolling down, it just goes through some of the information, my YouTube page, my blogger, some of the information there, good websites that have been claimed as good information places to find out of the sort of box information, not just the same old media shit. The claims that I think happened, early communication between the UN and China, certain questions that need to be asked as to where it came from, is it real, blah blah blah. Question 1, where did it come from? Question 2, how did the governments, corporations act? It then goes through some of the legitimacy and whether it's true. Also goes through a bit of the laws, the Chinese laws concerning the wild markets and wet markets. And on every page there's links you can go through. SARS-CoV-2 by numbers, how big they are, replication time scales, concentration host cells. It's been mapped out, the evolution through phylogenetic analysis. It then goes through the diameter, the genome length, evolution rate, mutation rate. It's got anything to do with the SARS-CoV-2. It then goes into isolation, sequencing, purification, viral culturing. I go through a bit of, has it been isolated? Well, it's been isolated 2.2 million times, sequence over 610,000 times, purifications. There's all the isolations from around the world, even part of my own research is in there. Just going through different ways to prove the legitimacy of it. Genomic sequence alignment, FUBAR analysis, there's many different things in that list there. Also goes through Cox postulates, COVID, misinformation, rabbit holes. There's a few little links. There's links on every page. Here's the main place where you submit an isolation on the gisaid.org. There's over 2.3 million submissions. Also Genomics UK Consortium, where there's 626 viruses sequenced. There's also a little new variant section, information going through their videos. On the next page it goes through the difference between the virus and the disease. Some people are saying that COVID-19 hasn't been isolated. You don't isolate the disease, you isolate the virus. It's a good explanation. A lot of people misunderstand and don't get, and they just look silly when they're trying to sound smart. It also goes through virus denialism, different places of where it came from. You can choose. We also go through the gain of function, possibly synthetically modifying the SARS-CoV-2. There's lots of links on there and research that was going on during the 90s and the 2000s to do with crossing cell species with coronaviruses and lots of other different things. So there's always links that you can click on. It also goes through the amino acid sequences of such viruses, Fibonacci genomes and factorial codes. It goes through all the genomic information, whether it's RAT-TG13, different types of samples. It goes through a lot of things. Could it be partially a synthetic genome? Has a look into that. First transmission electron micrograph. It then goes through Carrie Marlis's PCR test, how misunderstandings have happened. People don't understand what they're talking about when it comes to the PCR test when they're trying to explain it. Also goes through lateral flow test, cases, deaths and recovery numbers. I update that sort of every 2 weeks or so. UK survival rate is 95.46 and the world is 97.8. Goes through different options from countries such as Taiwan, Sweden and the UK. It also goes through deaths in hospitals and then the claims being made regarding SARS-CoV-2, mainstream media. We also have the right-wing narrative, exosomes from Taurus Karen and Andrew Kaufman, Kawasaki claim, empty hospitals, CDC didn't have the isolated virus, PCR test claims, 5G, it goes through Koch's postulates, misunderstandings, many of them, there's loads of them, debunking chromosome 8 fallacy and misunderstandings, DNA imaging and microscopy, vitamin D, the 5G network, have a look into that, corona ions, then goes through the life cycle of SARS-CoV-2, how it infects people, then moves on to the campaign for vaccines, all the different companies involved, Moderna, Oxford Uni, AstraZeneca, Pfizer. It goes through, there's the VERS list, the Vax tracker, which gives you a total number of the amount of people that might not necessarily and actually be the cause of death, but they have been marked down as something that has happened. And there we are on vaxtracker.com. Now just going through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 of the plans by these multi-corporations, the Great Reset, and it also goes through a man of contagious influence, Bill Gates' networks, the networks in the United States, the United Kingdom, between all the vaccine companies, Serco, the BBC, all these links. These are just posters that are designed going through the governments of the UK and the USA. Build Back Better, which is a UK thing. They've got the World Economic Forum and their Strategic Intelligence Plan, the Agenda 2030 from the UN, Rockefeller Foundation information, and then it goes through the reason I did this research, the reason I don't talk about this research online, and then sort of my final conclusion as to what it all could be, maybe what I think it is. I'm just trying to lay out everything on the table, all the cards. So it's been there for over a year now for people to look into and research, and some people have, and some people have enjoyed it.